There we go.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us again. My name is Dr. India White, and I am a national education consultant and co-author with Big Ideas Learning. And I'm thankful to be able to do this work on cultural competency. I'll be talking to you today about cultural competency, providing equitable math instruction through cultural relevance. And give me a moment. I'm going to share my PowerPoint presentation with you all. And I'm going to start at this current slide because we left off talking about teacher practice and different structures and programs that you would need for an effective math program in your classrooms. And we talked about jigsaw projects. We talked about QR codes, virtual reality, all of these things. We also talked about having a program that had, family letters, a program that, had diversity and inclusion in it. And now I want to talk to you guys about things that you can do as a teacher, no matter what the student's background, no matter what, just good teaching. Okay. It's that stuff that you do that when you walk into a teacher's classroom and you feel it and this is a good teacher. They are doing these things. And this is going to come from this top right corner. So here, this came from Dr. John Hatta. He did a meta-analysis. And in his meta-analysis, he looked at different effective teaching practices from various school settings. And he found that in the top right corner here, you've got these 5 components. You've got teacher clarity, feedback, direct instruction, classroom discussion, and spaced versus mass practice, which is basically how you're pacing out, if you're going to teach like 1 unit versus teaching, a topic throughout a semester. So he talked about different things that teachers can do. And he found that these top 5 here are guaranteed to increase gains in students' academic performance from a year to up to 2 years growth if a teacher does this with fidelity. So if the teacher is providing teacher clarity, feedback, checking for understanding, right? Direct instruction, I do, you do, we do, making sure that you're organizing those notes, classroom discussion, that I think is pivotal, because you can take a student through metacognition, through higher order thinking, skills. You can have math Bloom stems questions, where you're actually stimulating their thoughts and getting them to that level of proficiency and beyond. Okay, so when you have all of these different elements taking place, this really impacts instruction in a way that will guarantee students will see gains. Now, of course, you've got other things that contribute negatively, like in this corner here, TV, sleep. If a parent is working 2 to 3 jobs and can't really be there to assist their child with homework, or if the family structure might be a little, not your standard traditional healthy structure, if you've got, interventions in the home, all of these things also contribute, and they can contribute in a positive and sometimes negative. And believe it or not, even homework, which is in this upper corner here, can also be seen as it doesn't really have a high effect size. Like you would think, oh yes, give a lot of homework. Well, actually it could kind of backfire depending on how often it's given. If it's not given in a way where students are really able to check for understanding, if you're just throwing it at the kid, it can be too overwhelming and it actually work against you, believe it or not. So with that said, we stick to this upper right-hand corner here: teacher clarity, feedback, direct instruction, classroom discussion, and space versus mass practice for things that you can do as a teacher to guarantee success for your students. These are strategies that we use when we're implementing equitable practices in our classroom. And so I will be checking the chat as well. Yes, I love it. CJ said, be the change. Exactly. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what that's like. And I'm going to share this with you. I hope this plays for us while we're here. This is super neat. So I like talking about how to connect culture and ethnicity in ways that students learn math without making it weird, without, with just really enjoying the process. And so some things we found was that if you sing songs while playfully, like doing salsa or some other dances to the students, if the students want to rap about math. I had a situation where I was teaching complex numbers, and I taught the kids, I to the first is I to the second is -1, I to the third is -I to the fourth is 1. And if you know that, you can go through, with the degrees of 4, math dork moment. Okay. And I'm teaching this, and the kids literally started doing like this whole rap beat and created a whole song around complex numbers. And do you know that at the end of that unit, they aced that test? They aced it. And it was because they infused their culture into the learning. Their culture had a safe place into the learning. And you might not be able to do it every day, but when the students are asking for it, give it to them. And so you can have students dancing to the music. You can sing songs with the parents or the siblings, for a test, creating a greater climate of fun and learning, even at the home. So with that said, I want to show you guys this here. This is called a math musicals, and I hope this plays for us. I'm going to move our fabulous faces out of the way. Can you hear it though? I don't know if you can hear it.
No.
Can't hear it. Okay. Give me a minute, because I don't know if I can maybe click on it and maybe we can hear it if it goes. Maybe I can try to.
Yeah, what you have to do is in your sound, in your mic, you see your mic in Zoom where it says mute. Go to audio. If you click on the chevron and you click on audio settings.
Okay, so I have to go to setting and click on it.
Yeah, you click on the chevron, then you click on audio settings.
So let me see if I share it again, and let me see share
and
sound.
No, but not only that, then you had to look for something that says that click video audio or something like that.
Yeah, optimize for video clip. Okay, so then I'm going to do that for us.
Now show me triangle, quadrilateral, pentagon, hexagon, octagon.
Is it?
Well, the name of the polygon.
Okay, so this right here is playing a song called
Triangle. Words to the song. Now show me triangle. Now show me triangle. Quadrilateral, pentagon, hexagon, octagon. Now take the quadrilateral.
You can't hear me.
Pentagon, hexagon.
We have to stop the video so we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Four sides.
I think it's still playing, maybe in a secondary window.
Okay. So then what I'll do is I will stop sharing for a moment. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you kind of get the gist of that, but I wanted to share that with you only because
Triangle, quadrilateral,
we've got triangle,
pentagon,
quadrilateral.
hexagon,
Yeah, it might be the
octagon. Now
secondary
show me
window when you open it up
triangle,
again.
quadrilateral,
okay.
But it's delightful.
pentagon, hexagon, octagon.
Let me
Yeah,
see.
show
Let me
me
resume
triangle,
slideshow.
quadrilateral, quadrilateral.
Okay. Is it off of that or is it still on?
Octagon. Now show me triangle,
It's gone?
Yeah, we're playing the song.
pentagon,
Okay, but you can't hear me now?
No. Okay, now it stopped. Did you stop it?
Okay, it must have just kept going.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we are good to continue.
Yes. So can you see the current screen that says identifying and creating?
I think there might be a Zoom window open because we're hearing another sound now, or a maybe a YouTube window.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe close the YouTube.
Let me stop the share and let me look and see which video is open. But I did just stop. I did just stop my sharing of my screen, right? So let me share my
Yes.
screen now.
something to bang with, like a pencil or a spoon.
Can you
we're
see
If
it?
you can't find these
Sorry.
items, simply
Are you
clap
hearing it
your
again?
hands or
Yeah, we're hearing
stomp
another
your
song, like
feet.
it's autoplaying,
Now
maybe?
it's time for us to learn about polygons. Are you
I think it might
ready?
be embedded either in the actual it might be embedded either in the actual
If you want to just go ahead and turn that one setting off, that'll probably just end it.
okay, I think I just found it for you. So I think we are good to go. So now I'm going to share my screen again. Once I get to my presentation.
Yeah, no, and that seems perfect.
Okay, are we good now? Because I want to talk about identifying and creating ownership of biases. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
ma'am.
Yay! Okay, so we're talking here about explicit and implicit biases. I appreciate you guys and your patience with that technological glitch that we just had there. So when we're talking about biases, there are explicit biases and implicit biases. And basically what that means is there are biases that, you know, basically are from externally outside from us, things that we read on the newspaper. But then there's also implicit biases, just different things that we deal with in our own, where we're like, I don't know, I kind of feel this way about this certain, you know, type of person or this certain group of people or whatnot. These biases exist with all of us. Okay. And so long story short, in order to deal with the bias, this is not a time to feel guilty or shamed because there's a bias. But what it is it's a reflection to say, okay, I do have a bias. How can I deal with it? The best thing to do is to first start with your perspective and to have empathy. Dealing with this sense of color blindness, which I honor everyone that has said, I don't see color, I'm colorblind. I'm thankful that they are at least making the effort to say, I don't want to make a big deal about culture or race, and that's why I don't see color. It is well-meaning, right? However, I want to help that amazing group of people by saying, it's not that you don't see color. You see color and you value color, but you don't see it in a way that makes it detrimental towards that person that might have a unique difference. You've worked to embed their culture into learning. You've worked to embrace them. And so what we want to do is we want to allow our biases to now work for us. We want to be proactive at addressing any biases versus being retroactive, right? And then, of course, having introspection, because sometimes we have to check ourselves and say, oh my, I can't believe I had that type of thought. Or, uh-oh, I noticed that I was treating that person a little different, or I was a little harsh with that person, or I kind of assumed that because the way this person looked, or because of the way this person or where they came from, that ABC. So when we have introspection, it's great because it helps us to see where we are and how we can grow as leaders. Harvard gives an implicit bias test where they kind of move through biases and they help us to kind of grow. And the cool thing about this test, if you've taken the Harvard implicit, I think it's a Harvard implicit aptitude test or whatnot. If you take this test, what you'll find is that usually you'll start out and they'll say you've got a bias towards ABC. But as you take it, so I took the test before and I had a bias, right? But then as you grow as a leader, the test will eventually tell you you have no known biases. So I took the test, and then about 4 to 5 years later was when I finally was able to take that test and it report back to me, you have no known biases. And I'm throwing that out there because, you know, even as, you know, an African-American leader, I had biases that I had to work on. But with the help of, you know, different resources like this test and different studies and whatnot, I was able to work on myself as a leader and to grow. And so that is key. And so, you know, I want to encourage everyone to continue to grow in things like that. Now, this is very interesting. So this, some people say, okay, well, how do you work on equity and having change in a school district, in a state, and a university? you can implement equity policies. Now, Hillsborough County, they implemented an equity policy that, back in 2016, and their goals were to eliminate systemic disparities, to ensure systemic equity, and to guarantee family and community engagement. And the reason why they did this is because they had a high population of diverse learners, but they didn't have the representation in the classroom to help with those students, to bring that buy-in, to connect with the parents and the culture within the district. So they found that doing this actually did help them. And now we've got so many different things going on, right? And I'm gonna probably stop sharing in a minute so that we can just go right into questions and comments. But we have so many different things going on, in particular in our state, regarding policies and regarding, when to include, when is it appropriate to include culture in our learning, or when is it appropriate to include various equitable policies? Is it going to work against us? Is this going to, kind of backfire or whatnot? And so, so like we're saying now, they can't use the word systemic, right? And so, it's been very interesting to see like how all of this is going to kind of play out. You guys have my information here. I want to stop sharing my screen, but feel free to reach out. My Twitter is Indy Speak and Teach. My email, iwhite@larsontext.com, and my LinkedIn is the India White, and my website, www.india-white.com. Now I'm going to stop sharing so we can talk. So, so the biggest concern right now has been, okay, we've got what's going on, politically, right, in the news. We're hearing these things. We've got different courses that are being just kind of revised or undermined and looked at. And then we've got different practices. We have professors that are being challenged. People are afraid to even say certain things. They're afraid to talk about equity because they're feeling like it's being tagged in with different things like, critical race theory, right? And so first off, we have to understand the difference between equity and CRT, which I think that is the big elephant in the room, is people don't know the difference. So critical race theory says that because of institutional systems that were in place in the United States back in 400 plus years ago, 300 plus years ago, that people of color have been oppressed and can't be successful in society. I don't agree. I don't agree with this because I have seen so many equitable policies been from kids getting scholarships, grants, opportunities in predominantly white institutions. I've seen people, get top leadership positions. I've seen myself, I was able to get a doctorate from a PWI. So, and the reason why I say this is because the statement of, well, a person of color can't really advance in our nation because of what took place, I don't think that's true. We have moved forward in 2022. We've had an African-American president. We have a president, a vice president of color. And if our nation was so wrapped around hate, I don't think that would have ever even been an opportunity. I think, are there glitches and are there places for improvement? Well, of course. But has inclusion taken place? You bet. Have we moved forward? You bet. Are we still moving forward? You bet. So what do we do now? We have to move forward and continue to push a message of inclusion where we embrace all people from all backgrounds, and we do what we can to continue to support programs and systems that promote inclusion and that promote all of us sticking together. We don't want to be on any extreme ends of any extreme arguments. We are not here for that. We're here to close the achievement gap. And the way we did it, we started with Brown versus Board of Education, and we continue to move forward from there. We celebrate our baby steps here and there, and we stick to what we know is right. We do what is best for learners, and we celebrate those milestones that we've made over the years. I am very proud to be an American. I'm thankful for the opportunities that America and people that don't look like me have served so that I can be who I am today. So that is my takeaway, but I am here now to open it up for questions and comments from the chat or whatnot. We will talk about these things.
I don't agree with what you say about CRT, because CRT, first of all, it started as a legal in the legal field, and and what they say is not that a person of color cannot make it or can't succeed. What they say is that we cannot pretend that issues of race and power and poverty and all this are not embedded in systemic ways in our economic and historical and social systems. So they're not telling you that you cannot succeed. They started in that field, and they introduce new methods to understand the perspective of the people of colors. And they do say that, racism is systematic from the way that this country developed. And as you say, from the beginning, we get people out because, we are the whites and we're coming here, and the indigenous people had to be gone because we need our lands. So they focus also on property and property rights and things like that. But they're not saying that you cannot make it. I think we have to be serious about understanding what CRT is.
I agree.
Because a lot of people talk about it without knowing what it is, and we have to make sure teachers understand it. And I have this, I just copied this in the chat because yesterday I talked to my students about this as part of a class in curriculum.
Right. And I appreciate you telling me that. And I do agree with, yes, we understand that some things took place. And yes, we understand that things are systemic. But at the same time, can you also acknowledge that America has also given many opportunities to people of color to advance, from scholarships, there are grants, there are different opportunities where people of color can still advance and be successful despite the different setbacks. And that is where I think CRT needs to consider revising or updating, to not just leave it at there's all these things that took place. And I'm speaking as an African-American woman, right? So don't just leave me at the place where you say there's been these things that have taken place. There's, structural things, there's racism. I get that. But did you also talk about opportunity? Did you talk about the opportunities of if you go to certain places and we're going to give you maybe some finances, or we're going to work with you to see that we have, I guess, representation at the table and certain job forces. We have that throughout our nation.
I agree with you. And I think you and me are examples of those opportunities.
Exactly.
We are examples of,
that's what I'm saying is we can't leave that off.
The systems have cracks and exceptions, right? So the thing is, let's examine the system to see how we can improve it.
I agree.
Yes.
But the thing is, Mrs. Gabriella, and I respect you so much. Thank you. The thing is, yes, the system has cracks, but that doesn't mean that the cracks have overtaken us. And I think that what happens is when we paint just the one lens of CRT, but we don't talk about the opportunities and those that have thrived and those that have made it, like yourself, like myself, like the president, like others, people that we know, professors that are people of color, that are in predominantly white institutions, people that are running their own business, Black millionaires, different things like this. If we don't leave that, if we don't talk about that part, we're not telling the full story. And
that's why we have culturally relevant pedagogy that tells us, let's use all that, let's include all that in the curriculum. Let's show that a white woman who grew in poverty can be a president of an association and can be a successful professor and dean at a university, right? And you can be here and I can be here. So yeah, of course.
And the thing is, the beautiful part, even being on the stage with all you beautiful people, this right here is how we've moved forward. This is equity. My mentor, when I was a homeless student, see, I didn't tell my story, but, when I was 16 years old, I was kicked out of the house on Christmas Eve. Okay. I was left for the streets. I was homeless for 2 years, staying from house to house with friends. I had a mentor with red hair and blue eyes. Okay. Never had struggle before in her life. She took me in as a mom and she helped me. When I went to college and I would have to leave University of Florida because they would close the campus, I had nowhere to go. So guess who I called? That redhead, blue-eyed mentor. And she took me in all 4 years because I had nobody. To this day, she knows my children. She's a mama. It's deeper than just, this is what happened. Let's talk about how we've moved forward. See, this is my life. I have lived the success of equity and the success of America. I lived it. And I've had people that don't look like me carry my hand the entire way through. And that's where I say I have to respect them. And I have to say, we've got to stick together. Yes, it happened, but I forgive. And that's one thing, is I feel like we have to preach this forgiveness of, this happened. And yes, it was bitter. I'm not saying my road was all easy. Okay. I've had teachers. I had my math teacher in calculus. He said, India, you're stupid. You'll never understand calculus and you'll never major in math. Why don't you go do something that you and your people can do? But then I had a math professor that said, you'll be teaching this one day. I believe in you. I know you can do it. So
I would like to agree with you.
Right? But that doesn't mean that just because there's bad apples and people in the system that are bad apples, it doesn't mean that the system can't work. And I feel that, yes, it might be harder to make that system work at times, but it can work. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us. We can't say, oh, I'm going to live in my silo, or, just stick with my people. Like, we've got to stay together. And this is why I'm here, because I am a message of inclusion. I am a message of love towards everyone. I don't want everybody in my office looking like me. I want us to mix up and be together and help each other thrive and to soar. And that is where I feel that, yes, CRT, I hear the message, but talk to me about the success that opportunity has given them. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about these success stories, because they are everywhere and we're not hearing enough of those.
India, I thank you so much for sharing. And I think I do not like it when those things are being expressed in a color kind of phrasing, because those people who are poor are oppressed, and it really doesn't matter what color they are. And I was also, due to the system, had to be removed from my home, because if I stayed at home, my family would not have gotten food stamps because I was making money. So I ended up homeless at 17, and having nowhere to go. Very worried. I had saved money for my first year I worked so I could go to college. But at that time, the dorms closed. Yeah. And I had nowhere to go, and was trying to figure out where in the world I was going to sleep, until my then boyfriend, now husband, said, let's go. I'm going to take you to my dorm. And he was on the Air Force Base, and that whole dorm protected me. Yeah. And so I would have a place to sleep when the campus closed. Yeah. And he should have been turned in. I should have been turned in. I should never have been allowed to sleep there. But the whole dorm helped me. So, it's not a white and black thing. It's not, or race or color. No. These same systems oppress others as well. So we have to be cognizant of that. And I also know the discrimination you can feel from just being incredibly poor. I think I shared in another meeting that my family was very poor, not just in a poor area. We were the poorest family in the town that was the highest concentration of millionaires. So now think about that and what that meant, because there was no one like me at school. And what the teachers did to me, alienating me in that classroom, making sure I couldn't even make friends, where I had to go out on the playground and play with the sticks in the dirt because no one would play with me because of the way the teacher treated me in that class. It wasn't until a teacher came along in my third grade, and she took a look at me. I didn't even know you were supposed to write correct answers on paper. I didn't understand there were right and wrong answers until I got to the third grade. And the teacher sat down with me and she goes, Vicki, why are you not writing the right answers? And she made me sit in the class while everybody else went out to recess to do my work correctly. And then the next year I'm gifted.
Wow.
Okay. And they
Wow.
didn't even know what to do with me
Yeah.
because I was thinking so far above, but no one knew. I didn't even know how to express myself. When you stop and think about it, I didn't even know how to express myself to let the teachers know what I knew until that teacher sat down with me. And you know why she sat down with me? It was because my coat that my mother bought for me in the first grade, because she picked up acorns in the yard, the walnuts in the yard, and took them down and cashed them in for a coat for me. And by the time I got to the third grade, it was threadbare. I didn't have mittens. I didn't have gloves. And when I went outside, it was so cold that my hands would crack and bleed. And she decided that I did not belong outside. And that's how I got my help.
Wow. So
I think it's important for us to see beyond color and not make an assumption
and move
about
forward.
the person.
We've
Right.
got to move forward.
We have to.
We have to. We're all we have. And I could sit here and sip on lemonade and tell you battle stories.
Mhm.
But I choose to tell you about the love that so many people have given me. How about when I called my pastor, who is a white man from New York, who I love? I'm telling you, I'll fight somebody for this man. I love this man. And when my real father passed away, he was the first person I called. And I said, Pastor, my dad died. I said, will you be my dad? He said, sure enough, baby, I got you. And all the time, and the thing is, let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's right. And we need each other.
We do.
Yes, racial disparities took place. Yes. But look at the beautiful things we have accomplished in America together. We got to keep moving forward.
I actually think if we keep talking about it from the other context, you're actually ending up suppressing yourself and building up because I can look back just like you can, India, and you could have said, let's feel sorry for myself.
Oh yeah.
I never once said feel sorry for myself. It was more about, okay, what can I do?
What can I do?
What can I do? How can I fix this? How can I do better? What can I do better? And I think, and we no longer talk about the grit. And that used to be like, a big deal. How do you create that grit and in our students so they persevere through every challenge, because everyone has challenges. Everyone.
Exactly. And I spoke about grit, as you know, on my TEDx, the power of grit, because I found from students from different cultures, different upbringings, the one key factor that attributed to their success was grit. It wasn't race. It wasn't their status. It wasn't, anything. It was grit. And this is why I'm telling you, if we stick together and we do incorporate grit and we forgive, we've got to forgive what has happened. I had to forgive my teachers for some of the things that were said to me. And even listen, when my son is gifted, first generation gifted, I was not gifted. My son is gifted. And even when we went through a season when he first got gifted, I mean, he was just on the charts, boom, 95% district exams, straight A's, still to this day does that. But we moved to a different region where they didn't know us. They didn't know my son. And when we first got there, they said, we think your son might have a mental disability or might be special needs. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we know he had some type of education plan here. I said, you need to check it. It's an education plan because he is gifted. And they said, we don't believe you. We don't think he's gifted. And I said, well, then test him again. They tested him again. He got a 92% on the district exam. And they said, we apologize. We apologize. We just thought. And then it turns out last year, my son, second smartest kid of his fourth grade class. My son wants to go to Harvard. wants to be a software engineer, just bright. And I'm thankful to God,
Mhm.
but I had to forgive, right? And
Mhm.
now it's turned around. Now they work with him. Now they're using him to teach in his classes. He teaches his peers, and it's beautiful. Was it ugly a little bit? Yeah, but we forgive. We move forward. We have to allow people to guess and check. We have to have more compassion and more empathy of they're only asking because they're curious. They're not asking to oppress me. They're not asking to hurt me.
No, right.
They really are
Mhm.
just curious. And I have to respect that.
Mhm.
I have curiosities too, right?
Mhm.
So this is what I'm trying to say for us as leaders across this nation. We've got to stick together. We've got to push out any voices that would say, because that happened, I'm ticked off and I'm pulling myself in, and no, we've worked too hard.
Well, I think we're fighting a system.
We
I think we're fighting a system, and you just described what I think is the core to our educational system and the challenges right now is because we have focused so much on standardization and assessment that we now have flattened our top achieving students. We've made those who are bright close to being bright, and we've made them average.
Yep.
And we no longer celebrate those successes, nor do we design our classrooms to take advantage of those students who could
Right.
excel and do better. And your
Right.
son is a perfect example. They wanted to say, hey, look, I don't have to deal with him being bright. He needs to be average right along with everyone else. And I see that over and over and over again. Kids who go in, who are reading before they even get to kindergarten, and all of a sudden you're average. What?
Right.
What? Yeah, and our system promotes that average, and that because we want to teach a group of students the same thing at the same time. And how can we move beyond that? And how can we convince our legislatures that instead of approaching this from the way they are approaching it, from the idea of celebrating everyone's successes and promoting that drive to learn and not suppress that curiosity.
And I think that is definitely by proving to the legislator through our data, through real stories of what success has looked like because of equity, because of culture, because of inclusion. The legislature they've not seen that. They've only heard noise, right? If we could put something together and package it and say, legislation, this is what is really taking place in these districts. These are the numbers. These are the real success stories. These are the real personal, heartfelt, warm stories. And this is why we need to continue to incorporate equitable practices. And by the way, legislation, the definition of equity is, if we can do that, then that would give them an awareness. Maybe putting together some events in the community, which I know we're already doing, but coining it around the theme of inclusion and the theme of achievement gap success. This is what we need to incorporate, and we need to be very strategic as to how we go about doing this, because right now the legislation is throwing out all kinds of laws and all kinds of stuff and all kinds of noise, and they have nothing stopping them, nothing hindering them, because people are afraid. They feel muted, they feel paralyzed, and they're like, I don't want to go against this because I don't want to backfire on my own personal life. I understand, but maybe we have to package it in love and say, thank you for your efforts, but let me tell you what equity is, and let me tell you what inclusion has done and how it has contributed to our society. How many diverse leaders we have, how many students are first generation, how many students are African American and are now in law enforcement, which I have a student doing a phenomenal job as in law enforcement right now that is African American male. Highlighting these success stories and packaging in that and saying, because you've had inclusion, this is why we have this success. Please.
Well, I think you're right. I think the reason why we're having the series of requests coming to our universities, and those of you who are in non-public universities are not having to deal with that. But I think it's because they can't find it, and they've decided, that first batch of data, there was nothing there. So now they're asking for another batch, and they're trying to dig down and trying to find it. But the truth is, it's not there. And I think they might. I really feel that faculty are probably more conservative than people think they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are.
I agree. So I think that what I've been telling people nationwide, we've got to continue moving forward, doing what we know is right for students, moving forward together, ignoring the noise. You cannot feed the noise right now, because right now the sad part is it all even for kids, or is it politically driven? We don't know. We can't answer that, but we don't want to take a risk of ruffling the feathers of what we know has already worked by entertaining something that is temporary. We've got to continue to stick together and fight for each other, fight for the American people, which includes all of us.
Yes,
all of us.
Such a wonderful presentation. I want to make sure we're respecting everyone's
and
time.
I like
just
that
because
you said that, and thank you.
No,
so
this
much
is just
for
so
sharing.
great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Well, and we pulled Dr. White back in for an extra half an hour already.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really wonderful
you.
conversation.
And thank you, India, for sharing. You are an amazing person for us to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please keep in
And
touch.
we want to celebrate Gabby too, Rebecca and Charlotte. This is all
wonderful. Thank you.
celebrate ourselves. Yeah.